Again, there's a chance here to actually ask some questions of our three first speakers today. If you could wait, you're just at the front here, please. We'll get a microphone to you.
Hello, I'm Sally Kerr from Edinburgh Council. As a question for Polly, actually, I'm wondering how much you know about the work that Nesta in Scotland have been doing and a young rewired state, getting kids into, you're nodding away there, Colin, into programming, using Ruby and so on.
Yes, I am aware of that. There are a number of great initiatives going on across Scotland. So you talk about what work's happening in Edinburgh, in Coder Dojo, in Glasgow Science Centre. There's been a number of hackathons run by young people. So there are interesting things happening. But I think we need to coordinate some of that. It is patchy.
I mean, our own council's looking to do an event this year with young people just for that reason, but also to get them interested in data, to actually let them see what they could do with it. I think there should be more of that happening.
Yeah. I would completely agree with that. It is very frightening to know, one of our board members was saying last night, his 16-year-old is at a school in the Forth Valley area where they don't teach computing. And when the head teacher was accosted about this, the head teacher said, well, of course, the curriculum is very out of date, etc., etc. And so the problem is that the knowledge about what's been done around the curriculum is very out of date and is patchy across the whole of Scotland. I think we have to have the sorts of initiatives you're talking about. I think we need to connect them up so that every young person has an opportunity to get engaged. I think these are great initiatives and we just need to build on them.
Is this one of those situations that's a bit like teaching French? You know, all our kids learn French at school because we have French teachers. You know, it would make more sense for them to learn Spanish numerically, but we don't have teachers who can teach Spanish. So, I mean, there's just a shortage of teachers with these skills. There is
a shortage of teachers with these skills. Computing became unattractive for a number of reasons, one of which was the curriculum became very out of date. Another one is that actually, every local authority in the country is strapped for cash, and kitting out computing labs was an expensive thing to do. That's much less true now. So there has been a reduction in the number of computing teachers, and we need to just address that. And I think the other problem is actually keeping those computing teachers up to date. They're mostly hugely enthusiastic, but taking teachers away from school for CPD is an expensive thing. It's expensive in terms of taking them out of school, but you then have to backfill them with a teacher who's coming in on a contract, and schools are under so much pressure on the budgets that there has been very limited funding to be able to do that. And so we very much welcome the government's ring fencing of funding around CPD.
Is the government able to do any more, Colin?
Is that just a general question?
No, it's not general. Well, yes, obviously, but I mean, I was thinking specifically about education.
I think there's definitely, there's going to be a challenge getting behind the skills plan that Polly described, and I think we recognise that, and I think she's talked about some of the funding investments we've made. But as I said in my talk, we've made a significant investment in infrastructure, and we've done that as a platform for something else to secure the benefits of it. And we recognise that actually you have to start, with education if you're really going to build a world-class digital country. So I'm sure there is more that we can do, and I'm sure we're listening to this debate to inform that.
Okay. Any other questions? Gentleman there in the middle, please.
My name is Faris Samara. I'm from City of Glasgow College, okay? In my opinion, the reasons people are not interested in computing is they don't know what the word computing means, okay? Young people do not understand the term computing, so to encourage them to do computing is an extremely difficult thing to do. Additionally, the term ICT is an extremely old-fashioned term that should not be in our dictionary, and in reality, we should not be encouraging terms like ICT to be prevalent, okay? The speaker, and I'm not being critical, please, used terms like software engineering, computing, IT, ICT, and I wrote one other thing down, digital. Now, all these are effectively interchangeable. For me, we should all be advocating the term technology as an umbrella term for all these issues. And specifically to address the shortage in schools, you need to change the term computing, because nobody under the age of 18 understands what the word actually means, let alone become encouraged to take a course in computing. So that is a language issue that we, as leaders in this area, should be able to advocate and do something about. I know this is not a question, it's a comment, but I'm sure Polly would be interested in responding to that and potentially Colin.
Okay. Does anybody want to come in on that? Thank you for the comment anyway.
Well, I mean, I'm a marketing guy by training, so I'm always up for a bit of rebranding. I was nodding away because I do tend to agree with you that certainly the term ICT is a slightly old-fashioned term that doesn't resonate, and I agree with the word computing. I think the trouble is we'd all have 101 different solutions about what we should call ourselves, because I thought you were going to say, and we should now call ourselves the digital industry, and I was going to nod sagely and agree with you. And then you went for the technology word. I think it's definitely worth a debate, and I do agree with you that there is an image problem, and I think if we can address that image problem, but I think you have to do something more substantial than just address the image at the top. I think you do have to underpin it with all those sorts of initiatives in schools and elsewhere that Polly described.
Polly?
Well, I would agree wholeheartedly. We increasingly talk about the digital technologies industry. I think the problem is technology is much wider than just information technology. And I think that if you say digital, in 5 years' time, we will all be digital. So we need to be careful how we use the terminology. I also agree that ICT is now a misnomer, and actually the damage that has been done at schools is that ICT is seen as being interchangeable with computing, and too many non-computing teachers see ICT as being the name for technology, and then you get, my 14-year-old daughter came home from school and said, "You're doing technology, Mum, it's dead boring, isn't it? Well, we did some stuff with spreadsheets." And that misnomer has gone right throughout the schools. So we do need to change the jargon, but more importantly, we need to put the case studies in front of these young people as to what it is you can do with this technology.
Is it just young people, Marianne? Or, when you're using this terminology, is it a help or a hindrance with older users?
A hindrance. It's a hindrance. It's like a foreign language, and it alienates people. I mean, my question would be, why would you be a technology teacher if you could earn lots of money elsewhere? Why are our graduates going to go into teaching?
That actually leads me to, and I wrote this down too, effectively, this entire area, it's a priesthood. And like all priesthood, it holds its secrets close to its chest. And it wants to keep its mysteries safe and special. Where is the driver to actually, if you need to increase the size of the industry, you're also going to increase the earning or decrease the earning power simultaneously of the people already in it. So where's the incentive of the industry to actually get bigger?
I disagree with that, okay? So I wouldn't I? This is an industry that's growing. Since 2008, we've seen year-on-year growth across the Scottish industry of around 10% per annum. So it's not about reducing salaries in the industry. It's about bringing more people into an industry that is already highly paid, but there's absolutely no reason why that would then devalue the salaries. Because we're growing the sector, so we need more people anyway. We're not trying to do the same with more people.
Colin?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Polly. I mean, the more that we can stimulate the industry, the more that we can create an environment in which the skills are available in this country so that businesses, as they grow, stay in Scotland and don't hightail it to London or California, the more the likelihood is that the salaries in the digital industry will continue to increase rather than decrease.
Okay. Glad to be wrong on that one. Okay. Gentleman there at the front. Yeah, it does a bit. Yeah.
Hi there, James McKinnon from Kibble Education and Care Centre. Just following on the kind of previous points, I think not just even within society, do you not think there's a problem institutionally within, probably less the public sector, but within commercial organisations where IT are perceived as the geeks and the boffins, which, and even at a kind of senior level, Colin, I don't mean no offence to this, but the fact is, you're a head of digital strategy for Scotland. My perception of your background is you're not from an IT background. IT people are perceived as being IT people. They kind of stay there. The career progression for people within IT is within the IT industry. It's very, very rare for, in a lot of cases, for the CIO to have even come from an IT background. It's like we'll put someone from finance or commercial in there. Similarly as well, the CIO very rarely, I think Tesco's is the only example, and it's perceived as a disaster, with the CIO went on to be the head of the organisation. So there is, I think while we look at trying to attract young people, etc., there needs to be a change, I think, within organisations. I don't know how we bring it about. I think the second point I want to make is, in some cases as well, the people who are attracted towards the IT further education. Some cases they are people who maybe have, we're all well balanced in here, but they do fall into that geek and boffin environment where they maybe not got the social skills, or they've not got the broad-based skills, doing presentations, being able to speak to people. They're quite happy sitting there looking at screens and stuff. So again, I think that's another challenge, is getting the right people to go into further education.
That was actually a point I was going to make back to you. In fairness, do you not think that very often the geeks do little to help their case?
I do agree that it's a perception, it's that industry. I mean, it's a perception is if you're a geek or a nerd, you'll end up in IT. People sitting there, yeah, they're happy looking at screens. So I do agree with you, but it's how do we, I don't know how we attract, it's maybe even within the organisations. We see lots of organisations where people move laterally across the organisation. Somebody goes into procurement, may end up in finance and vice versa, but very rarely do they think, well, we'll put somebody from IT and take them through, because a lot of the things IT do have tremendous value throughout the business. We're major innovators. A lot of organisations are now going down the continuous improvement and lean route, or adapt and agile. There's tremendous, I would say, parallels between IT and the rest of the business. So I do think there is a perception problem within organisations of IT that maybe also leads to the recruitment decisions they make. Yeah, we'll bring this guy in because he's a good programmer, not thinking, yeah, that guy could come in as a programmer and he could progress through the organisation to do lots of different things.
I mean, I'd agree, but I think there is an opportunity to change that. I mean, if I can go back to my sort of professional background, if I can call it that, which is in marketing, the future of that industry is IT. And when I joined it 20-odd years ago, we went into it because we liked, pretty pictures and colours and being creative. The future of the marketing industry is about data and understanding IT, and that's the new breed of people who are coming through, and you can see it. And I think there's a very noticeable shift in what was once regarded as a highly creative industry. And I know there's a debate about whether IT and software should be reclassified as a creative industry, but those industries are being redefined.
Do we need to get to the stage, Marianne, where, given the sort of how widespread digital technology is nowadays, that we need to stop talking about it as something separate? It's almost a bit like discussing the fact that you may have driving skills or a driving license. Let it go. Let people do it.
I don't know how you would let it go and let people do it if people haven't got a facility to enable them to do it.
But an awful lot of people
It's seen as separate. Oh, yeah, well, yes. I mean, large sections of people aged 65 and over do use technologies, but research shows us that they're less confident using it and don't have as wide an understanding of it. And that's why we're looking at what they're actually doing, because there are a lot of positive stories of what they're doing. They're taking it and tailoring it to their own particular need, which is what we would all do. But they're doing it in very different ways. We did a huge survey there were 800 people that we surveyed, aged 65 and over, and asked them what technologies they were using, and the biggest one was email. And the guy said, when we asked them what were the best things, he said, I love my email, it's great, I just talk to people. It turned out that he had used his email to contact, he'd gone on the internet as well, to be fair, found out everybody with the same surname as him, contacted them right across the world, organised for a group of them to come over, and 70 people with the same surname as him came to Scotland for a week. And he negotiated through email deals with the hotels, local restaurants, local cafes, the transport that would get them around all of these places, as they did an historic route around this area. So the impact on the local economy was huge. The social connectedness of the people that connected with the family, they did historical stuff, and this was just one simple story, and that's all he uses, he claims. So they underestimate what they can do, as well as assuming that they know nothing.
And yet, would they give him a job at Visit Scotland? I think not. That's an excellent example. Yeah, they probably would, or they should. Anyway.
Yeah, so they do use it, but it's used in different ways, and we're really interested in people who aren't using it and who feel they can't use it. There isn't a lot of places that they can go and get help. And there was something called the People's Network that was set up in public libraries, specifically to encourage older people and people who were excluded from using technology to go in, and it was free online access, so you could get, online very easily. And that was taken over by younger people going in, obviously, because it was free online access, and they were on there, and they were... So it's very hard to work out what existing resources we can use to help people learn to use technology. Our drop-in user centre is very, very good, because it's older people working with older people, so they speak the same language. But that's very separate from the pool. We don't use those for the research studies because they're kind of professional participants. We use them with our students to get the students to understand about looking at things from the user point of view.
Okay. Question at the front here.
Hi, Lamine Lashap, National Records of Scotland. It's a question for Marianne about our older adults, as you described them. As part of your research, is there any key findings about, in terms of actual interaction with technology? So I'm thinking more about, is there any sort of findings in terms of, older adults prefer using tablets to, when I was thinking about the pictures I saw of tablets, to laptops, to desktops, to, and to enable us to better target our resources, to prefer using apps to browsers, or, is there any kind of early findings about that can ultimately enable us to better target that demographic?
We think that touchscreen is going to be really much more intuitive and helpful for older adults, especially if we can bring in a shared user modelling system that actually creates a system that adapts to the particular needs of particular people. We have had users come in and say they can't use the mobile phones because their fingers are too thick, and that is very frustrating. But I would be loath to say absolutely. When they come in and they use technologies in the user centre, they bring their own stuff or something new that they've got that they need help with, or they use the existing resources therefore, and it's set up to have some Macs and some PCs and laptops and technologies that they can adapt to and learn about that way. So
just thinking in terms of my own family, my own parents and my mother-in-law, for example, whatever it is they're trying to do, and I wish the designers of these things would bear this in mind, it's got to be as easy as the way they were doing it before, if not easier.
That's right, and one of the biggest issues is when they upgrade, and there are a significant number of them who can afford to do that, there are a significant number who can't, but those who do get incredibly frustrated because they've just got a handle on whatever it is they've learnt to do, and now they can't do it anymore because they've gone up to Windows 8 or something, and it's just completely different, and it completely throws them, and that anxiety and frustration and stupidity sets in, and that sets them back hugely. That is very true.
Yeah. Okay. Any other points? Right at the back.
Hi, Stuart Park, Armour Group. A couple of points. First of all, the gentleman from Kibble. I think it's down to the companies to make sure that we provide the routes for the technologists into the business. If I use our example in our public sector practice, there's 4 people running it. 3 of us are software engineers by trade. One's a sad accountant consultant, but we'll not hold that against them. And our Chief Technology Officer joins a graduate in 1998, and he's now CTO. So if you can put those strictures in place and give that vision to people joining, then you get the technologists spreading through the business. The second point is on, Polly said, we need 11,000 people. We're not going to change the education system very quickly in terms of schools. Does that not come down then, Polly, to what we do, for example, with FE? And get people in 1-year, 2-year courses who we then bring into business quicker, so getting better with apprenticeships and joining with the colleges to get people more quickly into technology?
Yes, I would agree. I think we need to do a huge amount around conversion courses. I think we do need to embrace modern apprenticeships much more than we currently do. And I think we need to be looking at people of all ages coming into the industry, it's not just young people we need people from a variety of different ages. And to address the points about IT departments causing the problem and geeks, that might be true in very large organisations, and of the 105,000 people working in Scotland in IT, there's about 80,000 people work in the IT industry. And in the IT industry, we need people of all sorts. So actually, it's not anything like a stereotyped as being that's the IT department over there and they're all geeks. There is no doubt there are a lot of people who fit that sort of teenage boys gaming in a quiet corners model in terms of software developers, but it's not the only model by any means. And I think the things we should look at are, where are some of the hotspots in the world? In India, where they have built an IT industry over the last 15, 20 years, over 50% of all the people who go into that industry are female. So there's no problem about women going into the industry there. It's seen as sexy and exciting. It's not seen as geeky. That's true across the Far East if you go to places like the Philippines and further afield. So I think we have to be conscious that we have probably a slightly older Western European model we need to ditch quick. You look at things that are happening in Tech City in London. Software development really is one of the best places to be at the moment, and is increasingly recognised. And the point that Colin made, we have a constant fight over where software sits within the classifications of industries. Is it in engineering? Is it in the creative industries? Software is seen as one of, if you look at the Scottish Government's analysis, software engineers are probably the second biggest part of the creative industries. So, we just have so much mixed terminology around this, we need to get it right. But I do think, if you see IT departments as being somewhere other, and people don't move from IT to other parts of the business, then I think the business is failing because it needs to be doing something about that. You can't do IT properly if you don't understand the business, and you will only do that if you bring people in and out of the department. And I look at some of the initiatives that I've seen recently for example, in financial services. The Royal Bank of Scotland very quickly got out to its staff and said, we want to be able to build apps. We want to use this new mobile environment. Come and bring your ideas to us and we'll make them real. And they've really created interaction on the front line there with their mobile apps team and the staff in the rest of the bank. So I think that's something we all need to address. But I would just underline the fact that in the industry, in the supply side industry, the mix of skills that we have is across the board. And yes, our engineering teams tend to be technologists, but we have a whole range of skills, and we need to get that message out to everybody to say there are all these roles, there are all these needs, and it's a great place to work.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm going to round it up there. If I can just ask you to thank our three speakers again, please.